So picture this. Evan Mercer, patrol officer with a decade of shifts under his belt, is trudging up his driveway at 3:30 in the afternoon, still shaking the smell of gas station coffee from his last call, when he sees her. Darlene Voss, HOA president, queen of clipboards, standing smack in the middle of his lawn with a measuring tape dangling like it was a sheriff's badge and a clipboard clutched like it was a constitution. She announces, with the kind of confidence only seen in game show contestants right before they're proven wrong, that half his yard is now community property. The forged land survey she waves around is so fresh the ink probably still smells of toner, and Evan's first thought is, historians still argue whether medieval kings had this much gall when redrawing maps by candlelight. 10 minutes later, this same self-appointed neighborhood monarch is in the back of his squad car, shrieking about presidential immunity, which would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. Evan isn't just some rookie homeowner, either. He bought this brick ranch house in Cedar Creek Meadows for peace and quiet, after years of apartment walls thinner than a saltine. The neighborhood had tree-lined streets, modest HOA fees, that Norman Rockwell flavor of safety. What he didn't know was that he'd also bought a front-row seat to Darlene's drama theater. It hadn't started here. 6 months after he moved in, she pushed the neighborhood welcome sign closer to his driveway. Better visibility, she said. Then roses, not his roses, HOA roses, lined up along his yard like floral soldiers for symmetry. When he built a simple wooden fence for his dog, she called an emergency board meeting about how it disrupted communal harmony. The exact phrase, delivered like she was quoting scripture. And you've got to wonder, was this quirky obsession just her version of medieval feudal lords moving stones to claim new borders? Scholars of suburban folklore might someday write dissertations on it. But the real showdown began that morning. She came dressed in a blazer with HOA president embroidered on it. As if anyone needed reminding, clipboard raised like Moses with tablets. She claimed a mapping discrepancy, proved his backyard belonged to the HOA since 1987, waving hand-drawn purple ink annotations on photocopied maps. Her proudest document bore a fake seal so cheap Evan swore it looked like a doodle in Microsoft Paint. He told her politely that property lines aren't decided by Sharpie. Maybe hire a lawyer, maybe a surveyor, maybe just a therapist. She left muttering about community spirit, but the seed was planted. She wasn't done. 2 days later, he found an official notice taped to his door. HOA letterhead, house clip art, even a gavel logo, declaring 15 feet of his yard reallocated. It reeked of a trap. Ignore it, and she'd cry adverse possession. Fight as a normal homeowner, she'd drown him in hearings. But Darlene had underestimated one thing. Evan wasn't just mowing grass and grilling burgers. He was a cop with years of filing airtight reports. Every rose bush, every sign shift, every paper taped to his door, he'd been documenting like it was evidence in a sting. What she thought was a suburban land grab was about to become a criminal case. Evan starts walking door to door, badge tucked away, neighbor hat on, and what he hears turns his irritation into something bigger. This isn't just his problem. 7 different households spill their stories, each one like a rerun of the same bad sitcom. The Johnsons, a couple who had built their garden shed with their own hands, torn it down because Darlene waved official documents claiming it sat on HOA land. A young couple down on Maple Avenue, moving their entire driveway fence back 3 feet because she threatened daily fines over an easement that didn't even exist. And then Frank, the elderly widower who'd given up a strip of his side yard so Darlene could build a community walking path. That path turned into her personal vegetable garden, complete with a wooden sign that read, HOA President's Sustainability Project. Irony must have been her favorite fertilizer. The kicker? She was selling cucumbers and tomatoes from that patch at the farmer's market, claiming the money went to beautification funds. Evan cross-checked the HOA treasurer's books and found a $3,000 hole big enough to drive a riding mower through. It was like peeling layers off an onion. You found another scam with every tear. Historians still argue whether con artists are born with this instinct or if suburban politics just cultivates it. 3 weeks later, the simmer boiled over. Evan had installed security cameras, knowing she'd be back, and sure enough, one lazy Tuesday afternoon his phone buzzed. There she was, striding through his gate like she owned the place, shovel in hand, digging around the metal surveyor's stake that marked his boundary. He raced home in uniform, parked in his driveway, and there she was, knees dirty, sweat glistening, yanking on the stake like it was Excalibur. He cleared his throat, and the scene froze. She straightened, brushing dirt from her knees, announcing she was correcting a surveying error. No court order, no legal backing, just that eternal confidence of someone who thinks clipboards outrank constitutions. When he asked for authority, she laughed, said the HOA president doesn't need permission to maintain community standards. It was the kind of laugh you'd expect from someone explaining Wi-Fi to a caveman. That's when Evan calmly tapped his body camera on, voice steady as granite, and informed her she was trespassing and attempting to destroy a legal boundary marker, a criminal offense. She rolled her eyes and launched into a lecture about chain of command, how HOA supersedes individual rights, how she had executive authority. He let her finish, maybe out of courtesy, maybe just to enjoy the absurdity, then told her flatly she was under arrest. Her jaw dropped like a faulty car trunk. She shouted about wrongful arrest, name-dropped her husband, the very important accountant, and demanded to speak to the neighborhood council. Evan reminded her she was the council, at least on her homemade business cards. Handcuffs clicked. Reality finally touched her, though only briefly. On the ride downtown, she rattled off every violation Evan had supposedly committed, from grass height to parking his cruiser wrong, threatening liens and eviction, until he reminded her those threats don't work from a jail cell. That shut her up for all of 30 seconds before she started sobbing about how she only wanted community spirit. Evan almost laughed, but he knew the real comedy was just beginning. At the station, paperwork peeled back her mask like old wallpaper. Turns out this wasn't Darlene's first rodeo. 5 years earlier, she'd been busted in another state, condo association this time, skimming funds and staking claims on common areas. Back then she was treasurer, not president, so maybe prison gave her the promotion idea. She'd been slapped with probation and community service, which clearly hadn't dented her ego. Evan's detective partner nearly spilled his coffee flipping through the forged documents she had cooked up. Fake lawyer signatures, notary stamps that looked like they were cut out of a cereal box, even a website for a law firm that didn't exist where she listed herself as lead consultant. Historians still argue whether the line between creativity and criminality is razor thin or just paper thin. Darlene seemed determined to prove it was both. The prosecutor, a man who'd seen every flavor of fraud from car title flips to Ponzi schemes run out of bingo halls, called it the most clear-cut case of HOA abuse he'd ever handled. Evidence stacked higher than Darlene's rose bushes, statements from neighbors, security footage of her shovel stunt, treasury records showing nearly $12,000 skimmed away. The news crews swarmed like seagulls at a picnic. The headline practically wrote itself. HOA president arrested for land grab. Neighbors went on camera to air every petty tyranny she'd inflicted, bogus fines, phantom violations, roses as boundary markers. Evan's arrest footage played on local TV and then social media, where it became one of those viral, "This is why nobody trusts HOA's" clips. Even Frank, the widower, got his side yard back, his voice shaking with relief as he thanked Evan. The Johnsons rebuilt their shed, Maple Avenue reclaimed their fence, and the civil lawsuit started tallying restitution like a grocery receipt. Court moved fast. Darlene took the stand, chin high, claiming she was a visionary leader, insisting the forged documents were drafts and the stake removal was snake inspection. The jury wasn't buying it. The prosecutor dismantled her story piece by piece, like a kid pulling apart Lego towers, until all that remained was fraud, trespass, theft, impersonation of authority. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge, eyebrows heavy with the weight of disbelief, listened to her final outburst about HOA immunity before laying down 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, restitution for every victim, plus $50,000 in fines. Her mouth hung open like a door off its hinges, whispering to her lawyer, "This can't be happening. I'm the HOA president." The gavel's crack ended that fantasy. And here's where the story exhales. The neighborhood slowly stitched itself back together, laughter returning to backyard barbecues, Frank planting flowers in soil that was finally his again, Evan sipping coffee on his porch with the piece he'd paid for when he bought the house. The air smelled of cut grass instead of conflict. And while the court files record the fraud, the theft, the sentences, what really lingered was quieter. The reminder that sometimes the loudest, bossiest person in the room isn't a leader at all, just a bully dressed in authority's clothing. The months that followed saw Cedar Creek Meadows ease back into normal suburban rhythms. But at night, under the hum of porch lights, neighbors sometimes shook their heads, half laughing, half still in disbelief, that one woman had tried to redraw the map of their lives with nothing more than purple ink and bravado. It's a strange thing. Communities rise and fall not on property lines, but on trust. And once trust is stolen, it takes longer than fences to rebuild. So let's slow this down. Let the tension drain out. Imagine the quiet after a storm, when leaves glisten but the thunder is gone, when dogs sleep easy again and people wave without suspicion. That's where Evan finds himself, breathing steady, knowing the law worked this time. For you listening, wherever you are, let this tale settle in your chest. Know that even the most absurd power grabs can be stopped, that documentation and patience beat bluster and clipboards. And as you rest tonight, may your own boundaries, yard lines or otherwise, stay safe, respected, and unshaken. Close your eyes, let the calm spread, and drift into dreams where justice isn't loud, but it is certain.